We're going to go ahead and start, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. For the hastening and the return of our beloved 12th Imam, please recite another loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, everyone is doing well. We're going to do a quick review of what we were discussing from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, and then we will continue with the discussion. I believe that we will have 2 or 3 more sessions on this story, and hopefully we'll be able to wrap up this story and move on to the next surah. We reached this point in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam that his brothers came to him for the second time. In the whole story of Yusuf alayhi salam, there are 3 separate occasions where the brothers of Yusuf leave Canaan and they come to Egypt to meet with him. And of course, at this point, he has become the Aziz of Misr. He has become a high-ranking official in Egypt. This time was the second time when they came, and this time Yusuf alayhi salam, he took his plan and he made it actualize. He brought it into reality. His plan was to keep Binyamin with him, and this time he was able to do that. The way he went about this, according to the verses of the Quran, is that this time when the brothers came and they were leaving at this point, this time he took his cup or his glass, he placed it in the sacks of wheat that belonged to Binyamin. And we know that as his brothers were heading out of Egypt and they were going back to Canaan, of course they were very happy because they had this time received wheat, and this time they had received an extra sack of wheat because they brought Binyamin with them this time. As they were heading out, the troops of Yusuf catched up with them, and the troops of Yusuf called out, "Innakum lasariqun." The troops of Yusuf said, "You guys have stolen something." The verses of the Quran further explained this critical moment. قَالُوا وَأَقْبَلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ مَاذَا تَفْقِدُونَ. As they turned around towards the troops of Yusuf, they called out. They said, "What is it that you guys are missing? You guys are saying we are stealing things." But when they were responding, when the brothers of Yusuf responded, they did not say, "We stole anything." They said, "What is it that you are missing?" قَالُوا نَفْقِدُ الصُّوَاعَ الْمَلِكِ. They said, "We're missing the cup of the king. We're missing the cup of Yusuf alayhi salam. And whoever is able to bring this cup or this glass to us, that we will give him a whole load of wheat, a camel load of wheat. However much a camel can carry, that is what we will guarantee for him." They responded, of course, with the idea and with the concept in their mind was that they have not stolen anything. So they responded to the troops of Yusuf. They said, "Listen, you know we have come here. We have not come to cause corruption. We don't steal anything." But then the troops of Yusuf said, "Listen, before we actually figure out whether you guys have stolen anything or you haven't, let me ask you this question first. If it is proven, hypothetically, that one of you guys has actually stolen something from Yusuf, then what is the punishment for such an individual?" They said, قَالُوا جَزَاءُ وُجِدَ فِي رَحْلِهِ فَهُوَ جَزَاؤُهُ. They said the punishment for such a person is that whenever you're able to find the stolen item in whoever's stuff you can find it in, well then that person becomes the servant of the person that he had stolen from. So yes, if you find the glass of the king in our stuff, then yes, whoever is taking this glass, whoever is stealing this glass, will become the servant of the king. That's what you're supposed to do. So then the verses of the Quran says, فَبَدَأَ بِأَوْعِيَتِهِمْ قَبْلَ وِعَاءِ أَخِيهِ. Then they started to look in the sacks of wheat of every one of these brothers, but they started from the other brothers before they got to the sack of wheat that belonged to Binyamin. And of course, ثُمَّ اسْتَخْرَجَهَا مِنْ وِعَاءِ أَخِيهِ. Then they took it out of the sack of wheat that belonged to Binyamin. Okay. When this happened, we don't know this from the verses of the Quran. The Quran doesn't particularly point this out, but we know this, that in terms of the story, when this happened, they must have come back into the city and they must have come into the presence of Yusuf alayhi salam. Because if these guys had stolen something, usually if someone steals something, if they are accused and convicted of theft, they won't just stay outside of the city. They will bring them to the person that they have stolen from. So you would have assumed that they would bring these individuals, these brothers, back to Yusuf and into the courtyard of Yusuf. And now they are having this conversation with Yusuf. And Yusuf looks at them, and of course he and Binyamin are on the same page, and he knows that this is not a stealing, this is not a theft that happened. But these brothers are stuck. They don't know what to do. So this is where essentially we ended. And of course the verses of the Quran said that the fact that Yusuf alayhi salam was able to bring Binyamin back, and that he was able to hold on to Binyamin and keep him with himself, this was the plotting and the planning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. We helped Yusuf in this plan. Otherwise, if it was not for us helping Yusuf, Yusuf would not have been able to keep his brother in Egypt. نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَّن نَّشَاءُ وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And when you look at every individual who has knowledge, there is always someone who has more knowledge than him. And we took this and we elaborated on it last time. We said that what this means is that at any level that you are at, with any particular attribute that you might want to think of, whether it's beauty, whether it's wealth, whether it's knowledge, whatever the case may be, there is always someone who has more than you. And we said what this teaches us is that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, we are to be happy and satisfied with whatever He has given to us. We're supposed to be content with whatever He has given to us. Because if you want the ultimate, there's never an ultimate in this world. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with, there will always be someone else who has more of it compared to you. And we also use this point to explain that the human being is to never feel arrogant. He is to never boast. He is never to gloat about the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to him. Why? Because if that blessing is a cause of gloating for him, it is a cause of arrogance for him, then he should know that there is someone else who has more of that same blessing. If someone walks around and they are beautiful, and because of that they treat others in a negative manner, in a negative fashion, someone walks around, they're popular, and because they're popular, they treat other people in such a way where other people are treated negatively. Any of these blessings that you look at, we have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted these blessings to others in a greater fashion. If you're popular, there are people who are more popular than you. Then what is it? How does this call for you to be arrogant? If you're beautiful, there are people who are more beautiful than you. If you're wealthy, if you have money, then there are people who have greater possessions and more wealth than you can ever imagine. Therefore, at the same time that the human being has to be satisfied with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted to him, this is also a lesson for the human being not to become arrogant. Because if any of these blessings calls for somebody to become arrogant, well then there's another person who has even more than what this individual has. Okay, this is essentially where we ended, and this is where we will continue with the discussion. Recite a salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. We said one main question that the Mufassirin have brought up regarding these verses is, why did Yusuf alayhi salam accuse his brothers of theft when we know, and the Quran is telling us, that this was not theft to begin with? At the end of the day, Yusuf was the one who placed the cup or the glass in the sacks of wheat that belonged to the brothers, specifically the wheat of Binyamin. Then why is it that Yusuf alayhi salam is coming and he's saying, "Innakum lasariqun," you guys are stealing? We said when you look at the verses of the Quran, in fact you find that the verses of the Quran don't say that Yusuf ever spoke of the brothers as being sariqun. The troops of Yusuf said, "Innakum lasariqun." The troops of Yusuf that left Egypt and they were chasing the brothers as they were heading out of Egypt, they were the ones who said, "Innakum lasariqun." This is the first response. The second response, what you also find in our ahadith, is this, that the Imams were asked about this, that if Yusuf alayhi salam knew that this was not theft, then why is it that he spoke of his brothers as thieves? The hadith says that when this call was called, "Innakum lasariqun," you guys are thieves, what Yusuf meant by this was that you stole Yusuf from his father years ago. Not that you are stealing this cup or this glass. This is another response. It is one that you find traces of it in our ahadith. Which of these would we want to go with? Either way, I believe, is going to be fine with us. Okay, so these brothers, of course, when they saw that Binyamin is not going to be coming back with them, they were stuck and they didn't know what to do. So now they start to speak to Aziz of Misr. Now they start to speak to this high-ranking official in a very, very respectful and calm manner. Now they are trying to attract the kindness of Yusuf alayhi salam, because at this point they are really stuck. What did they say? قالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا. They said, Your Honor, this son that you took, this Binyamin that you took, he has a father. This father of his, number one. Number two is kabirun fi sin. What does Shaykh mean? Shaykh means an old man. What does kabir fi sin mean? It means also an individual who is old. In order to emphasize how old Yaqub is at this point, and in order to attract the kindness of Yusuf alayhi salam, these brothers started to tell Yusuf, they said, listen, Your Honor, this individual that you took into your own custody, he has a father. His father is old. His father is weak. Inna lahu aban shaykhan kabira. فَخُذْ أَحَدَنَا مَكَانَهُ. Takes one of us instead of him. Because Binyamin is the one that our father now keeps close to himself. Binyamin is the one that he loves most out of all of us. If you want to take one of us, no problem. Take one of us as the one who will pay the price for this theft that has happened. Why are they saying Shaykhan Kabira, an old man who is an old man? Because at this point, they are stuck, number one. Number two, they really feel embarrassed. This time, the brothers of Yusuf losing one of the children of Yaqub, losing one of their own brothers, it's very different from the way it was when they were trying to get rid of Yusuf. When they were trying to get rid of Yusuf, they had no problem getting rid of him. That's why the verses of the Quran says that they sold him at a very, very small amount. But now they feel embarrassed to go back to Yaqub and say that your son is not with us anymore. So now their approach is going to be very different. Okay, what did Yusuf alayhi salam respond to them with? قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. He said, God forbid, أَن نَأْخُذَ إِلَّا مَنْ وَجَدْنَا مَتَاعَنَا عِنْدَهُ إِنَّا إِذًا لَظَالِمُونَ. He said, no, how would I ever do such a thing? You guys said that the law in your land is that whoever the glass or the cup or the stolen item is found with, that individual becomes the servant of the person who was stolen from. Why are we going to break the law? Why are we going to break the principle? I would never do such a thing. Again, in this verse, what you find is that Yusuf again is not speaking of theft. Again, he is not speaking of anyone stealing anything. See, when Yusuf himself speaks, he never uses the word sariqah. He never uses the word stealing or theft, right? Yes, when his troops were speaking, they said, innakum lasariqun. But he said, I would seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I would take anyone other than the person who the cup was found with him. You could have just said the person who stole the cup, but that is not what Yaqub said. That is not what Yusuf said. Why? Because Yusuf knows that this is not theft. A prophet of Allah, he is careful in terms of how he is going to speak. He said, nonetheless, I cannot take any of you instead of Binyamin. This is the rule, this is the law, this is the principle, this is what you told us. We cannot do anything other than this. The brothers of Yaqub, the brothers of Yusuf and Binyamin, at this point, the verses of the Quran say that they lost hope. فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ. They reached a point where they found, yes, they knew for a fact that there is no way that they're going to be going back to Canaan with Binyamin. What did they do? خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا. They came together as a group. They distanced themselves from others, and they started to whisper amongst themselves. And of course, this whispering, they were trying to come up with some type of solution. They were trying to come up with, what are we supposed to do? We don't want to go back to Egypt because we don't want to go back to Canaan because we don't have Binyamin with us. And at the end of the day, we can't stay here. We don't have a house here. This is not where we live. خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا. They started to speak to one another. قَالَ كَبِيرُهُمْ. The eldest brother, and different names have been mentioned for him. Some say Rubio, some say other names. We don't know exactly what his name was. قَالَ كَبِيرُهُمْ أَلَمْ تَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ أَبَاكُمْ قَدْ أَخَذَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَوْثِقًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Don't you guys know that Yaqub, he took a promise from you this time? See, the first time, Yaqub did not take this promise from the brothers. The first time Yaqub just said, I'm worried if you take Yusuf, and we saw what happened. This time, Yaqub actually took a promise from them as well. He's reminding them, our father took a promise from us. وَمِن قَبْلُ مَا فَرَّتُمْ فِي يُوسُف. And we all know what you all did to Yusuf before. So he said, this is what I'm going to do. فَلَنْ أَبْرَحَ الْأَرْضَ حَتَّى يَأْذَنَ لِي أَبِي أَوْ يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ لِي. Said, I'm going to stay here. Either my father comes to me and tells me that it's okay, then I can go back, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala figures out some sort of solution for me. Outside of these two, I'm going to stay here. وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of those who judge. If He wants to solve this for me, He will solve it for me. But I am not going back to Canaan anymore. He was so embarrassed of going back to see Yaqub again without Binyamin that he made the decision that he would stay there. Okay, what are the other brothers going to do? One of them turned to the other ones and he said, Irji'u ila abikum. Said, you know what? You all return back to your father. Faqulu ya abana. This is what you're going to tell Yaqub, because you're going to go back. Binyamin is not going to be there. He's going to be very worried and he's going to be very concerned. This is what you should tell him. فَقُولُوا يَا أَبَانَا إِنَّ ابْنَكَ السَّرَقَ. Your son, he stole. وَمَا شَهِدْنَا إِلَّا بِمَا عَلِمْنَا. And we only bore witness to the things that we saw. We actually saw the cup or the glass come out of his sack of the wheat. Okay. وَمَا كُنَّا لِلْغَيْبِ حَافِظِينَ. And we never knew that this was going to happen. I mean, nobody told us that Binyamin was going to end up stealing stuff. We were very surprised ourselves as well. Since when does Binyamin steal things? We didn't think Binyamin was going to steal anything. If we knew that Binyamin was the type of person that would steal things, well, we wouldn't take him on this trip, right? We wouldn't even put him in a position where he could steal things. And even if he had, we would not have made it clear to the honorable individual in Egypt, who is Yusuf, by the way, that if someone steals something, they have to become a servant of the person that they stole from. وَمَا كُنَّا لِلْغَيْبِ حَافِظِينَ. There was no way we could have known that this was going to happen. Now comes the time for the response of Yaqub. And of course, remember that Yaqub, at this point, he has already lost Yusuf, and now they're telling him that the last person, another person he's lost, is Binyamin as well. So this is essentially the last straw that is going to break the back of the camel, as they say. This is really going to make things very difficult for Yaqub alayhi salam. So before Yaqub responded, they added one more line. They said, وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كُنَّا فِيهَا. If you don't believe us, go and ask the city that we were in. Go and ask the region that we were in. What does that mean? That means that this story has become so famous now in that city and in that region. Everyone knows that Binyamin stole. So if you go around and you ask, everyone will tell you that something like this actually happened. وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كُنَّا فِيهَا وَالْعِيرَ الَّتِي أَقْبَلْنَا فِيهَا. You can even ask the other members of this caravan that came with us, and they will tell you that we are truthful in our claim. Okay. Now, of course, Yaqub has to respond. قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. He said, no, your souls, your egos, they have taken something terrible and they have made it look good in your eyes. There is a fierce discussion here amongst our mufassirin. Is Yaqub sitting there and saying, listen, I don't believe you when you say Binyamin stole and that's why he's still in Egypt? Is that what he was saying? None of the mufassirin have accepted this interpretation because, of course, we know that a prophet, he would not respond in this manner. A prophet is not going to sit there when someone has not done anything wrong and sit there and say, even by mistake, no, you have done this. Especially when he was not around anyways. Okay. So the Mufassirin have a discussion as to what is Yaqub referring to exactly when he says a very similar phrase that he said when the brothers came back to him with the news of Yusuf. Because when the brothers of Yusuf came back with the news of Yusuf not being around anymore, with the news that Yusuf is dead, what did Yaqub say? He said a very similar line. بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. That your egos, your souls, they have taken something bad and made it look in good in your eyes, meaning that you've done something wrong. So why is Yaqub responding with the same response? The best response that you will find amongst Mufassirin is this, that what Yaqub was saying is that Binyamin not being around, the pain that I'm feeling, this is all a continuation of what you guys did with Yusuf. And one of the signs, one of the clues in the verse that tells us this is what Yaqub was talking about is the continuation of the verse. He said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, the next verse, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, I will show graceful patience, which we talked about before. This is the second time that Yaqub is saying, I am going to display graceful patience. We said this is the type of patience where you don't complain to the servants of Allah, you complain directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا. I hope, I still have hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring all of them to me, not just Yusuf. He will bring Yusuf and Binyamin back to me. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. Okay, a couple of very important points to be understood from this verse. First of all, look at the hope that Yaqub alayhi salam has. This is maybe 20, 30, 40 years after Yusuf has gone missing. And now things have gotten even more bleak because now he is losing and missing Binyamin as well. So you would have assumed that at this point he would give up on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even a little bit, because when things start to look like they're not going your way, naturally the human reaction is to sit there and say, oh, I don't think God is there for me as much as I thought. Your hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to dwindle, it starts to move away. But you find with Yaqub, the hope, it still remains there as if nothing has happened. He didn't say, I will find Binyamin. He didn't say Binyamin will come back to me hopefully. He said, no, I hope that Binyamin and Yusuf, both of them, will come back to me. This is the utmost hope, utter hope that Yaqub alayhi salam has in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hope that Yaqub is displaying is something that we are taught to also display in our difficulties as well. There is a beautiful hadith from the 6th Imam when he is quoting the 1st Imam. If I could tell you how beautiful this hadith is and how beautifully it puts things into perspective, that not only are you not supposed to lose hope when things don't look very good, that you are supposed to have hope in the things that you don't think are possible more so than the things that you think are possible and are going to happen. I'm going to explain this and elaborate on it a little bit more because it may be a little difficult to understand what's being said. The 6th Imam, he is quoting the 1st Imam. He said this, كُنْ لِمَا لَا تَرْجُو أَرْجَى مِنْكَ لِمَا تَرْجُو. He said, listen, the things that you don't have hope in, the things that you assume are not going to happen, have more hope in those things happening than the things that you actually have hope in happening. There are certain things in life, when we look at them, we categorize them. We say, this is likely to happen. This one is unlikely to happen. This one will probably happen. This one will probably not happen. The Imam is saying this categorization is fine. But just know that just because something seems likely to you or unlikely to you doesn't mean that's how likely or unlikely it is in the plans of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, many times, what seems extremely unlikely to you is in fact very much likely in the plans of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the vice versa, what seems very much likely to you is not likely at all in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, have more hope in the things you have no hope in compared to the things that you do have hope of them happening. Meaning that your understanding of the world is 180 degrees, it needs to change. The things that you think, oh yes, this is going to happen. No, probably they won't happen. The things that you think they will never happen, you never know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take them and He will make them happen. And then the hadith continues. The hadith says that when we say have more hope in those things that you don't believe that they're going to happen, the things that seem unlikely to you, here are some examples. Musa went out to grab some fire that he saw in the middle of the night, and he came back as what? He came back as a prophet. Talk about unlikely and likely. Is that something you thought that was going to happen? That's not something we would think was going to happen. And then the hadith continues. It says this. It says that Saba, the queen of Saba, Bilqais, she left her kingdom thinking that she's in charge. She was kafir when she left. But when she came back, she was Muslim because she submitted herself to Sulaiman and the religion of Sulaiman when she came back. Likely and very unlikely that you see on both sides. And then the hadith continues, and this is probably my favorite. It says the magicians of Fir'aun, when they left and they started their job that day because they were trying to bring might and power to Fir'aun. But what they didn't realize is that at the end of the day, they gave their life in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are some examples where things that were extremely unlikely ended up happening. Kun lima tarju kun arja. Lima la tarju minka lima tarju. Have more hope in the things that you see as unlikely than the things that you see as likely. Because essentially our understanding of the world is completely ignorant. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. This is the hope of Yaqub alayhi salam. Beyond that, Yaqub uses a phrase that you find is used 2 more times in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. He said this. He said, Asallahu an ya'tiyani bihim jami'a innahu huwal alimul hakim. He said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them towards me. And this shows, by the way, that this line, it was not a dua. It was not a prayer. It was him just explaining that he has this hope. Because at the end of the phrase, he didn't say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. He didn't say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kind. He said what? He said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is knowledgeable and has wisdom. If it was a dua, he would have ended with something that would have alluded towards the mercy and the kindness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Innahu huwa al-alimul hakim. He knows everything and he is the wise one. He knows where Yusuf is and he is wise enough to know when he has to return Yusuf back to me, that it is going to be in my best interest. This innahu huwa al-alimul hakim, this knowledge and wisdom that Yaqub alayhi salam is speaking of, it comes up at the very beginning of the story of Yusuf. It comes up in the middle of the story of Yusuf. Also comes up all the way at the end of the story of Yusuf as well. The first moment when Yusuf was a 9-year-old child, he came to Yaqub and he told Yaqub that I see the moons and the star and the sun, they are bowing down to me. What is the interpretation of this dream? Yaqub told him, all of this is going to happen to you. Innahu huwal hakimul alim. Inna rabbaka alimun hakim. Your Lord has knowledge and he knows what he is doing and he is wise. Yusuf, God is going to plan out your life, but with knowledge and wisdom. At the beginning of the story. Fast forward to the middle of the story, Yaqub is saying he still knows what he's doing. He is still the one who is knowledgeable. He is still the one who is wise. Fast forward again to the end of the story. Yusuf alayhi salam, after everything that has happened, the brothers are there, Yaqub is there. He turns to his father. He says, Father, you saw that my dream came into fruition. My brothers, Shaitan tricked them, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala planned out everything perfectly. Innahu huwa al-alimul hakim. He is the one who has full knowledge. He is the one who has full wisdom. The story of Yusuf alayhi salam, if you wanted to summarize it in a couple of words, in one phrase and in one sentence, this would be the one sentence that you would use to summarize all of the story. He is the one who has all of the knowledge and he is the one who is all wise. So when Yaqub says innahu huwa al-alimul hakim, he is talking about a very critical concept in this whole story. Okay, moving on from this. وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ, and then he turned away from them. وَقَالَ يَا أَسَفَ عَلَى يُوسُفَ وَابْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. He turned away from them and he isolated himself and he started to cry and he said, Ya asafa ala Yusuf. He's still missing Yusuf. وَابْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ, and he lost his eyesight. فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Okay, what are these verses of the Quran talking about? Kadhim, Kadhm, Kadhim, the seventh Imam. The word kadhma refers to the idea of holding something in, habs, imprisoning something. And when you hold your anger in, they call this kadhmul ghayth. And therefore, they call the seventh Imam al-Imam al-Kadhim, because he was the one who kept the anger and held the anger inside of himself. فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ means that Ya'qub alayhi salam, inside of him was a volcano. He was erupting inside. But he held this back to himself, in that when he was interacting with people, he would not complain to people. He would only complain to who? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Then what we find in the ahadith is very beautiful, because this pain that Ya'qub is feeling now is even more than what he was feeling before. Before it was just Yusuf, now it's Yusuf and Binyamin. This is where the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt come into the picture, and there is a connection made between Ya'qub and Imam as-Sajjad. Because Ya'qub is a person who lost his loved one, and of course he's still alive, but just because he's lost him, he is crying so much that he has lost his eyesight. And Imam as-Sajjad is also an individual who has lost his loved one. But the difference is that his loved one has become shaheed. So they asked the Imam, they asked the fourth Imam, they said, Ya Imam as-Sajjad, the pain, the agony that Ya'qub was feeling, can you describe it for us? And he said the pain and agony that Ya'qub was feeling was more than 70 mothers that have lost their child. What does that mean? How can you imagine something like that? It's very difficult to even imagine something like that. But then in the other ahadith, what you also find is that the fourth Imam, people used to come to him. They used to say, you know, you're crying day and night after Karbala. What's going on? This is enough. No more crying. And the fourth Imam would respond. He used to say, Ya'qub, he lost one son of his, and this one son of his was alive. He was not even dead, and he knew that he was alive. And still he cried so much that he lost his eyesight. What are you going to say about me? Me, the one who witnessed on the day of Ashura, hundreds of my beloved ones, tens of my loved ones who became shaheed on that day in front of my own eyes. Of course, whenever I'm reminded of them, that I will cry. And that's why in a hadith we have that the people who were known for crying, there are 5 of them. There is Adam, there is Ya'qub, Yusuf, Fatima salawatullahi wasalamuhu alayha, and the 5th is Imam as-Sajjad. Adam, because of what happened to him and him leaving essentially the heaven, right? And then from there you move on to Ya'qub. He was crying for obvious reasons. Yusuf was crying because of Ya'qub while he was in prison. Fatima, she was crying, salawatullahi wa alayha, because her father passed away. And this is where we find Mus'haf Fatima was revealed to her. This is not Quran or revelation in that sense. No, these are angels speaking of a certain knowledge to her. This is where how Mus'haf Fatima came into the picture. It was because of the grief that she was feeling when the Prophet was no longer around. And then the hadith continues. The hadith says, the 5th is Imam as-Sajjad, who cried for 40 years after Karbala, and any time he was reminded of Karbala, he would immediately start to cry. The Bakka'un, as the hadith says, there are 5 of them. The 5th is the 4th Imam. Moving on. When they saw that Ya'qub is saying this and he's turned away from them, then they turned to him and they said, قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ تَفْتَأُ تَذْكُرُ يُوسُف حَتَّى تَكُونَ حَرَدًا. They said, listen, father, I know that you're missing Yusuf, but you know the problem is if you continue like this, then you're not even going to be alive anymore. You're going to kill yourself. حَتَّى تَكُونَ حَرَدًا. Harad means when you're between life and death. You've cried so much. You have so much grief. You're not eating. You're not drinking. But at the same time, you're not dead either. You're somewhere in between life and death. حَتَّى تَكُونَ حَرَدًا أَوْ تَكُونَ مِنَ الْهَالِكِينَ. Or you're about to die. And what did Ya'qub respond with? He said, don't worry about me. قَالَ إِنَّمَا أَشْكُ بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. He said, listen, I'm not expecting anything from you. My pain, my grief, I will only complain about my grief and my pain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know something about this situation that you all do not know. Because Yaqub from the very beginning, he knew that Yusuf was in fact alive. He knew this from the very beginning. Therefore, he's saying, I know something about this situation. I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring about something that you all do not know. Okay. Then, of course, Binyamin is not there. Yusuf is not there. Yaqub says, well, we have to go and find them. Ya bani yadhhabu fatahassasu min Yusufa wa akhi. My children, you all need to get up. You need to go and do tahassus. Tahassus comes from hiss, when you sense something. He said, go and do tahassus. This is different from tajassus. Tajassus means when you look for something negative, you spy. And that's why in our hadith it's mentioned that it is not good for a mu'min to look and do tajassus of the flaws of other mu'mineen. You know, you always have that one person who knows about everybody, but he only speaks of their flaws. He only looks at their life and their character to be able to pick certain flaws of theirs. And then the hadith says that there are those who will look at the flaws of other individuals. They will take it, they will put it in their pocket so that later on when this person is in a vulnerable situation or this person, he feels envious towards him, then he will pull out these flaws and he'll say, oh, this person has this flaw and this flaw and this flaw. And you know, we have this unfortunately in our own families, in our own communities. There are individuals, unfortunately, sometimes we might even be engaged in this at times, where you look at the life of a person and the only thing you're looking for is what? A tajassus. You're just looking to find the flaws of this individual. And this is a very, very scary thing because it shows that this individual has nothing better to do in his life. Because the hadith says, if someone has something better to do in his life, if someone is truly trying hard to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not have time to sit there and worry so much about the flaws of others. As the hadith says, Tuba liman, good for the one, shaghalahu uyubuhu an uyubin nas. The one who's so busy with his own flaws and his own issues, he doesn't have too much time to sit there and figure out the flaws of other people. But then again, you have people who do tajassus. Yaqub, he said, don't go and spy. He said, go and investigate. Tahassus. Go and search for something good. What is that good thing? Yusuf. فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِن يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Do not lose hope in the convenience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bring to you. Rawh literally means just like the word faraj. Faraj means any convenience. Rawh is the same thing. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. Do not lose hope in the convenience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring to you. And then he added this phrase. And this is very critical, and I will end with this point. إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. He said, no one loses hope in the convenience, in the help, in the aiding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except for the disbelievers. Okay, what does this tell you? I'll explain this and elaborate on it a little bit. Usually when someone offers their help, whether you believe in whether they can help or not is not a big issue. Whether you take them up on their suggestion to help you or not is not a big issue for them. If someone calls you and says, listen, I know you're going through a difficult financial time, but I'm here to help you. Now, if you don't call them back and you don't ask for money, you don't ask for a favor, they're not going to be upset with you because they say our help was there. You know, if you want to take our help, you take it. If you don't want to take it, that's fine as well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the verses of the Quran is saying this. When I say have hope in me, this is not a recommendation. This is not just a suggestion. This is a requirement. When I say have hope in me, you have to have hope in me and me only. In other words, when you don't call your friend back and ask him for a favor, does he take it personally? Does he feel disrespected? No, because you have other sources of income. If you don't call him back, he knows that you found someone else who could help you out with your situation. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there is no one else who can help you, when you don't take him up on this suggestion of help and support, he takes it personally.
for a lack of better term. You are disrespecting him. Why? Because there is nobody else who can help you. Therefore, in Islam, believing in the hope, believing in the help, believing in the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not just a recommendation. It's not something that you can do and it's just good to do, and if you don't do it, you're fine. No. إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. If you lose this hope, you are amongst the what? The disbelievers. That's why we have hadith Qudsi, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says, any of my servants, if they live their life, and I look into their heart, and I find that in the heart of this individual, he doesn't have hope in me the way he has hope in others, that he hasn't cut off his hope from others, and he's not looking only and only towards me, you know what I will do? I will make sure that he learns the lesson that nobody else in this world can help him. And I will place him in a very humble and a humiliated situation. I will humiliate him, and I will distance him from me. And then the last line of the hadith says this. He says, the reason why I will do this is this, because there's never been anybody who's had hope in me and that I have disappointed them. If they had hope in me, I was there for them. Therefore, everyone has to have hope in me. No one has the right to turn away from the hope that they have in me. So in Islam, relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not a recommendation. It is a requirement. Yaqub alayhi salam is teaching his children, don't lose hope in the convenience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. It's only the disbelievers who reach this point. With that, inshallah, we'll bring today's talk to an end. We will continue from the next session, from when the brothers go back and enter upon Yusuf for the third time now, and they speak to him from a very vulnerable position, and also what the hadith says pushed Yusuf to actually disclose his identity to his brothers for the first time. What did Yaqub do? Or what did Yaqub send with the brothers all the way to Egypt? Yaqub sent something with the brothers from Canaan to Egypt, that when the brothers presented this thing to Yusuf, he took it and he started to cry. What is that thing? We know in the story of Yusuf that Yusuf sent back his shirt. We know that as the brothers go back to Canaan, after he discloses his identity, that they are going to take back his shirt with them all the way till Canaan, and they're going to throw it on the face of Yaqub. They're going to place it on the face of Yaqub. We know this. But before that happens, Yaqub is going to send something from Canaan with the brothers all the way to Egypt, that the hadith says when Yusuf alayhi salam saw this, he took it, he kissed it, and he started to cry. What was that thing? Inshallah, next Friday we will continue with our discussion. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of our brothers and sisters who are in pain, who are in difficulty, who are going through difficult times, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees them from their difficulty and pain, inshallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our brothers and sisters anywhere in the world, specifically these days you hear the news of Yemen, these are brothers and sisters that we have to help. These are brothers and sisters that are in need of our help. These are people who don't have, they don't come up in the media. Nobody is talking about them. This is when we have to do our job. Any of us who can help, inshallah, financially, as well as praying for them, that we need to do that. It's a very important duty of ours to do so. And alhamdulillah, there are a multitude of organizations that are taking donations for this purpose. And so let's all, whoever can, let us try to donate for this cause. And I can say with confidence that 95% of us easily can definitely donate. And so let's do that, inshallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, last but not least, that He hastens the return of our beloved 12th Imam bin Nabi wa alih. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا